Hey guys, and welcome to part 2 of our Furnishing Hogwarts series. Today we tackle the first floor and basement of Hogwarts. The layout is not exact due to size restrictions once again, but I did my best to keep things in relatively the right place and still have them make sense in the build. It's sort of correct? It's hard to tell. If you look up floor plans for Hogwarts, you'll receive several different results due to the castle changing from movie to movie. Also, considering the build is on a lot that is much smaller than the one used for most Hogwarts builds in The Sims 4, I basically had to put the classrooms wherever I had enough space. So, it's not perfect, but I did my best. Today we will be covering the Potions classroom, Charms classroom, and Transfiguration classrooms, as well as furnishing Snape Study and a study inspired by Lupin's study from Prisoner of Azkaban. We start off the video by tackling Professor Flitwick's Charms classroom. This is my favorite classroom to make because it's so unique. I mean, how many professors stand on top of a pile of books? Mine never did, I can tell you that much. Although sometimes I felt like I needed to sit on a pile of books to see them. Haha. That was a short joke. I'm short. Anyway, for those of you who don't remember Flitwick, here's a passage from Pottermore. Speaking of eccentrics, you'll like our head of house, Professor Phileas Flitwick. People often underestimate him, because he's really tiny. We think he's part elf, but we've never been rude enough to ask. He's got a squeaky voice, but he's the best and most knowledgeable charms master alive in the world today. His office door is always open to any Ravenclaw with a problem, and if you're in a real state, he'll get out those delicious little cupcakes he keeps in a tin in his desk drawer, and make them do a little dance for you. In fact, it's worth pretending you're in a real state just to see them jive. I love it! He sounds like such a caring and genuine individual. And to clear up some confusion, he is actually part goblin, which is sort of ironic considering the same actor also plays Grifhook, the old goblin that works at Gringotts Wizarding Bank in Diagon Alley. Also, in case it wasn't picked up on by the passage, he is the head of the Ravenclaw house, the house that emphasizes the pursuit of knowledge and learning. Unsurprisingly, when he went to Hogwarts, he was placed in Ravenclaw and was a model student. I'm not sure if there was a Ravenclaw that ever existed that wasn't a model student. I mean, seriously, name one. I want to know. It sort of makes you wonder why Hermione Granger wasn't put in Ravenclaw. Because, you know, her whole thing is that she's smart and, like, an amazing student. I have a running theory that her bravery and courage overrides her wit sometimes, but she often uses her wit to get out of situations that the Golden Trio ends up in. Maybe the Hat saw that she would do better in Gryffindor than in Ravenclaw? Who knows? But if you have any more in-depth theories, I'd love to hear them. I was doing a bit of research for this video the other day, and though I didn't immediately remember it, I realized with minimal searching that there were two different versions of Professor Flitwick. Flitwick changes forms after the first two movies. The Flitwick in my head was the younger Flitwick that took form after the first two movies. You know, the one with the center-parted hair and curled mustache that directed the choir, kinda grumpy. Whereas the Flitwick in the first two movies was an old man with white hair and a massive mustache that wrapped around his entire head. I mean, his entire head. And he seemed much cheerier and happier than the other one. Much more befitting his description. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure why this fact eluded me until recently, but I'm just going to chalk it up to childhood ignorance and the fact that Flitwick wasn't exactly central to the plot. Anyway, suspecting it was a similar case to the whole Dumbledore switch up with the actor dying, I did a little bit more digging and found that that wasn't the case at all. Apparently a new producer of the film, of the third film specifically, didn't really have much written for Flitwick after the first two movies, but liked the actor and wanted to keep him in the series. So they worked together and created a new character that originally wasn't supposed to be Flitwick at all, but the director of the last four movies insisted that the actor continue to play Flitwick without changing him back to the original Flitwick from the first two films. Did my childhood brain register this? Nope. Post a comment down below if you didn't realize that Flitwick suddenly became younger either. And that's the other thing. The change didn't make any sense. Flitwick was meant to be old. He taught charms to Harry's parents. Even J.K. Rowling was shocked by the change, stating that she always thought of him as a small old man. He opposed Voldemort in the First Wizarding Wars and was supposed to look as old as McGonagall and Dumbledore. All that being said, I still found myself liking his younger version more than the older one, though it doesn't make any sense considering this timeline of the rest of the story. I mean, who knows? Maybe his goblin blood keeps him young? Or gives him an abnormally long life? That still wouldn't explain why he goes from old to young. But it obviously wasn't drastic enough of a change to warrant any sort of fan uprising. The older Flitwick just seemed less alive, less vibrant. Though he may have matched the character description better. Maybe more fans just enjoyed the new Flitwick over the old? Which one did you guys like more, and why? Leave a comment down below, I'm genuinely curious. Hey, while we're on the subject of Flitwick, let's talk about Charms class, since that is what he teaches. So, what is a charm? Well, a charm is a spell that adds certain properties to an object or individual. It is important to point out that it doesn't physically change the object from its original form. It simply adds a status effect. For example, Wingardium Leviosa causes an object to levitate. It adds the levitation effect. And Defindo is used to precisely and accurately cut something. Because of this, it's called the severing charm, and if used inappropriately can cause injury or death. Safety scissors don't exist in the wizarding world. User discretion is advised. An object or person that has a long-lasting charm placed on it is called bewitched. As I'm writing this, an extremely specific scene from The Goblet of Fire keeps playing over and over in my head.
No, don't! Stop! He's bewitched, Cedric!
Get off me!
He's bewitched!
There it is! More specifically, Victor Crumb was bewitched with the Imperious Curse, a charm that allows the caster to control another's mind. You see, before Crumb had been allowed to enter the maze, Barty Crouch Jr., posing as Alistair Moody, was able to put the Imperious Curse on him, so as to use him to wipe out the other contenders, and ensure that Harry got to the portkey. And nobody else did. And he nearly does. He stunned Fleur, who would have gotten swallowed by the maze if Harry hadn't stepped in and saved her. Crumb was in the process of casting the Cruciatus Curse on Cedric, the Torture Curse, when Harry stumbled in. Though it's not like Harry saved him or anything, he just sort of got in the way. But it gave them enough time to get away from Crumb, and even though Crumb tortured him, Cedric still came to his rescue, saving him from getting swallowed by the maze, and by extension, showing us how good and kind he was. Poor soon-to-be Edward Cullen. Rest in peace. Anyway, this whole story is one shining example of the reason why there are 3 charms that are unforgivable and will lead to a one-way, lifelong trip to Azkaban. I mean, how more evil can you get than controlling people's minds and making them do unspeakable things? Torturing and then killing them. I mean, you could use other spells to inflict torture, but there's just something so personable about the 3 unforgivable curses, especially in a world where you could totally grow back a limb if need be. Last I checked, you can't grow back a brain or replace the inescapable memory of excruciating pain felt by the Cruciatus Curse. On a brighter note, you can see the general idea for what we have going on for this classroom with the bookshelf against the back wall and books piled up haphazardly everywhere, which was extremely tedious because it's incredibly hard to tell where the books are spatially unless you look at them from multiple angles, hence why I screwed them up so much at the start of the build. I mean, it kind of seems like a given. Ravenclaw, Flitwick, books. The man loves his books, alright? But we're about done here, so let's move on to the Transfiguration class, taught by Professor McGonagall.
When Minerva McGonagall first attended Hogwarts, she was sorted into the Gryffindor house after 5.5 minutes of the hat switching back and forth between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw. Due to this, she's known as a hat stall, or someone who has a personality equally suited to more than one Hogwarts house, and as such took more than 5 minutes to be sorted. The only known hat stalls are Minerva McGonagall and Peter Pettigrew. I feel so icky putting them in the same category, but well, there you go. Pettigrew ended up in Gryffindor. Can you imagine how different the story would have been if he'd ended up in Slytherin? The other house the hat was trying to decide between? He probably never would have become good enough friends with James and Lily, so he wouldn't have been able to betray them. And the entire book series would have been completely different, because Harry would just be a regular wizard, with parents that loved him, and no lightning bolt scar. Anyway, some near hat stalls were Hermione Granger, Harry Potter, Neville Longbottom, and Phileas Flitwick. There seems to be a large amount of overlap, with a tendency towards courage and bravery, studying hard, and pursuing knowledge, as 3 out of the 5 of these hat stalls were complications between Ravenclaw and Gryffindor. Or sorry, near hat stalls and hat stalls. I wrote this part after writing and recording the Flitwick section, and of course I was right about there being some sort of conflict with Hermione's house selection, although it never conclusively says why Hermione was ultimately sorted into Gryffindor. Anyway, back to McGonagall. She is the head of the Gryffindor house and also the Transfiguration professor. She holds a special place in my heart because of her no-nonsense, kind-hearted attitude, and as a fellow Gryffindor, I would have loved to have her as an instructor and study Transfiguration. Transfiguration is the ability to change the form and appearance of an object or person, or changing one thing into another thing. Transfiguration was widely considered to be the harder and more scientific of the main 2 magic disciplines. Anyway, after reading about it and how some of the spells work, they sound a lot like how precise I had to be back in analytical chemistry in college, which is extremely hard, but very rewarding when you understand the concepts. Which leads me to believe I probably would have enjoyed Transfiguration more. I mean, who doesn't want to reach their final form, an animagus? An animagus is a person who has achieved the ability to transform into a specific species of animal at will without the use of a wand or spell. Animagi are few and far between due to the laborious process it takes to become one. But McGonagall's animagus is a cat, with spectacle markings on its face. It's believed that your animagus and your patronus charm are linked. McGonagall's patronus is a domesticated cat, and her animagus is also a cat. Harry's patronus is a stag, and his father's animagus was a red stag, so it's likely that Harry's animagus would also be a stag. If we follow this logic, my animagus would be a wildcat. This is sort of vague, as there are many different kinds of wildcats. The image appeared to be that of a lynx or a bobcat when I finished the patronus quiz, so I'm just gonna go with that. I'll leave the link to the Patronus quiz down below in the description, so you too can discover your Patronus. Oh, and just to clear up any confusion for those of you who are maybe not that into Harry Potter as the rest of us. The Patronus charm is used to repel Dementors, which are creatures that feed on all of your happy memories and hope, leaving nothing left but hatred and despair. Seriously though, they will literally suck your soul right out of you if you hang out with them too long. Kinda sounds like some people I used to know. Anyway, the Patronus charm manifests as a blinding light in the form of a guardian spirit animal that a wizard's soul has a particular affinity for, and is a projection of all of your most powerful positive feelings. It is an extremely complicated spell, and many wizards never are able to summon a corporeal Patronus. There is some evidence to indicate your Patronus may change given a dramatic life-changing event, but an animagus is fixed and will never change. For example, Tonks, a metamorph magus, which is totally different from an animagus, had her Patronus change from a jackrabbit to a wolf after she fell in love with Lupin, a werewolf. Although this is sort of a bad example, because her Patronus might be affected by the fact that she's a metamorph magus, and can change almost any aspect of her appearance at will? I don't know. Snape's Patronus is said to change into a doe after Lily, the love of his life, dies. This is only a rumor, and it may have been a doe all along. Basically, there's no conclusive evidence of this, so it could happen, but there would almost definitely have to be some sort of complete life-altering event from which you're never the same person again, which is rather sad. Or rather good, depending on if the event is happy or sad. Who knows? By now, we've moved on from the Transfiguration classroom to the study that was inspired by Lupin's study from Prisoner of Azkaban. Remus Lupin was a dear friend of James Potter, Harry's father. He was also known as Moony, which was a sort of codename that only the Marauders knew. The nickname is a reference to his lycanthropy, or werewolfism. The Marauders were Wormtail, Moony, Padfoot, and Prongs, or Peter Pettigrew, Remus Lupin, Sirius Black, and James Potter. They created the Marauders map, which was an aid to all mischief makers and showed the Hogwarts grounds with every inhabitant going about their business in great detail. The 4 Marauders were all from Gryffindor and grew to be great friends. By their 5th year, they had all become animagi in order to help Lupin during his changes on the full moon, which I think is so sweet. You see, werewolves can't control themselves when they transform, but animagi can, and they were able to keep Lupin calm and away from people. In a way, lycanthropy is sort of like rabies. I mean, think about it. Rabies takes control of your brain chemistry and forces you to act far more aggressive and attack anything you come across, so that the disease can spread. All it takes is one bite. Luckily, there is a cure for rabies nowadays, so we don't have to worry about it too much. Anyway, back to Hogwarts. So the Marauders had become unregistered animagi in order to help Lupin. James was a red stag, you know, Prongs. Pettigrew, or Wormtail, was a chubby rat. And Sirius Black became a rugged black dog, or Padfoot. They were taking a huge risk by not registering as animagi, and it is unclear to me why they didn't. Maybe because they were mischief makers and could get away with more mischief if nobody knew their animal forms? Probably. And it does stand to reason that it was an advantage for at least 2 of the Marauders. Sirius was able to break out of Azkaban because his animagi form was not taken into account when they imprisoned him, and Pettigrew faked his own death and lived as Scabbers, Ron Weasley's rat, for 12 years before he was outed by Sirius for betraying James and Lily Potter. If they had been found out, they would have been sentenced to Azkaban, which is a pretty hard sentence if you ask me. I mean, it's not as if they were murdering people and stealing things, except when Pettigrew killed a bunch of muggles, faked his death, and framed Sirius for the whole thing and got away with it. How is this guy put in Gryffindor again? His only redeeming quality is that he values life debts, and as a result let Harry go free, but maybe he felt guilty about betraying Harry's parents? Seriously, I feel like I'm really reaching here. None of that screams courageous or brave to me. What was the Sorting Hat thinking? By now we've moved on to Snape's study. I wanted it to be sort of dark with herbs and potions strewn about, with the silver-haired frame of the gray-haired guy I've been using as the founder of Slytherin's portrait lurking over everything. I put it on the first floor because, well, it's 2 floors below Dumbledore's, and we are a bit constrained with the build height of 4 floors, so I couldn't put it a floor up because the topmost floor is inaccessible due to the lack of spiral staircases in The Sims, and I tried and failed at using the new bending option on the staircases, as they still won't fit. So Dumbledore's office is on the 3rd floor, and the only stuff on the 4th floor is the Gryffindor common room and bathing area. There are quite a few things I wish I could have added to this build, but the amount of building restrictions are woefully high. For example, I would have loved to have the library and the infirmary, the North Towers, the clock towers, and the Quidditch pitch, but they never would have fit. Anyway, back to Snape. He is possibly one of the most complex characters in Harry Potter. He is known mostly for teaching potions class at Hogwarts, although he also taught Defense Against the Dark Arts for a year, and was headmaster the following year. Here's a quote from one of the books that took place during one of his Defense Against the Dark Arts lectures. The dark arts are many, varied, ever-changing, and eternal. Fighting them is like fighting a many-headed monster which, each time a neck is severed, sprouts a head even fiercer and cleverer than before. You are fighting that which is unfixed, mutating, indestructible. He had a great passion for the dark arts and was possibly one of the most qualified people who taught it. So how did he gain his passion? He grew up in the same town as Lily, Harry's mother, and he fell deeply in love with her. However, when he first attended Hogwarts in 1971, he was sorted into Slytherin, the rival house to Gryffindor, the house that Lily was sorted into. To make things worse, James and Sirius bullied Snape relentlessly, which drove Snape to fall in with the bullies in Slytherin, who happened to be pure-blood supremacists. This strained his friendship with Lily even more because Lily was Muggle-born. Snape was consumed with wanting to get revenge on James for all of the awful things he had done to him, and out of the want for revenge grew his passion for dark arts. Though I'm sure some of it came from the influence of his friends. Snape and Lily's friendship ended in their 5th year. Snape tried to win back Lily's affections by becoming a Death Eater, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe Lily liked bad boys? I mean, she fell in love with James Potter, who was definitely a bully and a mischief maker. I really feel for Snape, though. The love of his life fell in love with his worst enemy. Shortly before Lily and James were murdered by Voldemort, Snape became a member of the Order of the Phoenix and was a double agent during the Second Wizarding War. He was trying to redeem himself and protect Lily, but it was too late. So he devoted himself to protecting Harry instead, although he certainly didn't make things easier on Harry. Harry looked too much like his father, and Snape gave him grief for much of his time at Hogwarts. Dumbledore and Snape shared an uncommonly strong trust for each other, for reasons kept secret to readers. They had an agreement that should things go south, Snape would be the one to kill Dumbledore, in order to alleviate any suspicion the Death Eaters had that he might be working for the other side. Before Dumbledore's death, Snape promised to protect the students from the Death Eaters, who would inevitably take control of the Ministry of Magic as well as the school. Later, during the Battle of Hogwarts, Snape was murdered by Voldemort because he thought Snape was the master of the Elder Wand. I won't go too into detail about the Elder Wand because I'd like to do a video about it later, but Snape wasn't the master of the Elder Wand, so Voldemort never became its master. Anyway, there is Snape's complicated history which caused the whole complex relationship with Harry. I wonder how different it would have been if Harry had been female and had looked more like Lily. Snape probably would have acted more like a dad and less like a villainous professor. Maybe he would have cared more. Maybe he would have cared too much and gotten himself into trouble with the Death Eaters. Who knows? And now we've finished up with the right side of the castle and head back to the left to put in a few study rooms and a bathroom for the members of the Slytherin house. The way I have the whole place structured is basically houses and floors accessible to the houses on the left, with all of the offices and classrooms except for the Charms classroom on the right. So, let's take this time to talk about some Slytherin lore. Slytherin was founded by Salazar Slytherin, a powerful, pure-blooded wizard. Big shock, I know. There's a reason why all of the Muggle haters end up in Slytherin. He hated Muggle-born wizards so much that when he brought up the idea of not allowing them to the other Hogwarts houses, the other founders disagreed with him. He left and he did not return. Salazar had the ability to speak Parseltongue, which is the ability to talk to snakes, and it is rumored that anyone who can speak Parseltongue is somehow related to him. Hence the whole Harry being accused of opening the Chamber of Secrets thing. The Chamber of Secrets was constructed beneath the Hogwarts dungeons, and it was said that only the true heir to Salazar could open it and use it to purge the school of Muggle-born wizards. In 1943, Tom Riddle opened the chamber and used the basilisks to kill Muggle-borns. One such Muggle-born was Moaning Myrtle, now a ghost that lives in an abandoned girls' bathroom. In 1993, Riddle opened the chamber again by possessing Ginny Weasley, with a piece of his soul tied to a diary. His true purpose was to attempt to lure Harry down into the chamber to kill him, which he nearly accomplishes. I mean, seriously, if Fawkes the Phoenix hadn't shown up, he totally would have died. Which leads me to another weird, strange theory that probably isn't correct. In Fantastic Beasts and the Crimes of Grindelwald, Dumbledore says a phoenix will appear to any Dumbledore in need. Harry was most definitely in need. Does that mean that Harry is related to Dumbledore in some way? It would explain the whole obvious favoritism that Dumbledore has for Harry, and the whole sort of grandfather-like way he seems to guide him throughout the series? Or maybe Dumbledore just sent the Phoenix to him because he knew he needed him. Am I making way too far of a reach? Probably. Anyway, Back to Slytherin. The last known heir to Salazar Slytherin is Delphine Lestrange, the secret daughter that Voldemort and Bellatrix Lestrange conceived together. I don't even want to know how that went down. The next couple of minutes are spoilers for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, so if you have any plans to watch or read that, then this is basically the end of the video for you, and thanks for watching. If you don't care about spoilers, then enjoy this extremely spark-noted description. So, Delphine is the main antagonist in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is a crazy play. If you ever want to go and look it up online, it's totally bonkers, and I feel like it has fallen under the case of stories that are rushed and need a bit more time to develop. But basically, Delphine never went to Hogwarts, and instead is raised by a Death Eater that never really liked her, who I imagine taught her all manner of dark magic spells, because she is portrayed as a very powerful witch in the play. But I don't really see how she could have gotten that way unless she'd gone to Hogwarts to learn the spells, so she must have learned them from her surrogate? I don't know, whoever raised her. Her adopted parent, guardian thing. She convinced Harry's son Albus and his friend Scorpius Malfoy to go and ensure that Cedric never makes it to the Portkey in the Triwizard Tournament by pretending to be almost Diggory's niece concerned about the life of her cousin. The boys steal a time turner and travel back in time to save Cedric Diggory, and travel forward to find out that Voldemort has killed Harry and has complete control over the wizarding world. They realize that Cedric must die for Harry to succeed, and travel back in time to undo what they'd done, which they accomplish, but are intercepted by Delphini once more, where she reveals herself as who she is, and breaks their wands in two. Then Harry and his friends surround her and march her off to Azkaban. This is a much abbreviated telling of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and I've left out a few things, so if you'd like to find out more, I'll leave a link to the page I received my information on down below in the description. We are coming to the end of the video, so if you guys would like to see more, keep an eye out for part 3, where we furnish the second floor of Hogwarts. It should be a bit smaller than this one, and hopefully will be out next week. This video was 15 hours long when I started editing, hence the whole breaking it up into parts thing. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.